I haven't touched my PSVR2 for a long time due to a dearth of good new titles. Bizarrely low-key launch and practically nothing in the latest state of play. Not even a teaser of an Astrobot title. Surely a no-brainer. Just feels like Sony isn't that fussed about the platform and isn't giving much to early adopters to look forward to. Were dev kits delivered late? I don't understand the apathy. Interested in the team's thoughts, which segues seamlessly, John, into something which we were hoping to talk about last week, but we ran out of time, where actually you've been having a good deal of fun with PSVR 2 recently, and there have been some standout titles that we should be talking about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, the game changer for me was however long ago. I got those lens inserts, so I don't have to wear the glasses in there. They're awesome. They really work well. But as new games have come out, I've been giving them a shot, and there's some I want to talk about. So first of all, this past week, the game Synapse released, and it got me thinking, like, and I'll talk about this in a second, but one of the problems I think with VR gaming in general is that you can't rely on the big names. There's a lot of stuff coming out in the VR space from developers you may never have heard of, new IP that you've never heard of. You know, it's difficult to get a feel for what the idea is from a trailer. You kind of got to dig deeper for VR. And it's been like this since the beginning. Stuff like Half-Life Alyx is the exception, where it's like Valve and Half-Life, right? Most of this stuff is not super well known. I look at this myself with Boneworks, which was on my Game of the Year list the year it came out. And I never would have checked that out if it hadn't been for Ian Higton being like, dude, this is the best VR thing ever. And it's like, I didn't recognize the name. Nothing stood out about it to me from just hearing about it. I needed to try it. And that's when I discovered, oh, this is actually great. And I think there is a bit of this happening in the PSVR space right now where there are really good games coming out. It's just that it doesn't have that name recognition. You know, the brand recognition, it's not there. You actually have to check out new stuff to give it a shot. So first, I want to talk about Synapse, which just came out this week. I just bought this a few days ago and have been playing it, and it's awesome. So to set the stage, it is basically kind of a rogue-lite-ish experience that's still story-driven, but it's a first-person combat game that plays with physics and like time and space, and like basically the game opens in a way that I really like, unlike a lot of VR games that like you go through all the logos, the menus, and then they train you, and you're just kind of standing around waiting for the game to tell you what to do next. And that's not what this does. It's just like you hit play and it just cuts to this beach with a house in front of you and somebody saying, you got to infiltrate that house and get to this guy. And you're just like immediately moving. There's no setup there. You make your way into this weird house, and then you kind of discover that he's like plugged into this strange like machine, and you got to infiltrate his psyche, and you go into this weird black and white world, and that's where you start to learn the ropes. And it kind of gives you the mechanics a little bit at a time, but it's very natural. And basically what it is you're trying to run through the psyche by getting through these combat puzzles, if you will, until you reach like the end point for that guy. But when you die, you kind of redo it, right? And you kind of have to build up some of your strength again. But what I like is just the mechanics of it are really interesting. So at its core, it has like shooting mechanics, like any VR shooter, which feel great. You know, it's, again, Half-Life Boneworks kind of stuff where you're manipulating weapons. It is simplified more like Half-Life. Like, for instance, when you reload, you just tap circle, and sort of a magazine kind of pops out and you just push it back in, right? It's kept very simple, but it's still tactile and fun to use. And then it's got this neat cover and climbing system where, like in Half-Life, you had to physically duck behind stuff, and that's fun. And you can do that here as well, but you can also, using sort of the palm button, you pull it, you actually grab onto the scenery, and you can move your whole viewpoint around while holding onto the scenery, which is also used for climbing. But if you like run up to a cover, you do that and you kind of pull yourself down below cover, and you're kind of like moving yourself up and down and shooting out over the top, going for some headshots. That feels great. But then the real twist comes in because you get this sort of like anti-gravity thing that lets you pick up objects. And when you're inside these psyches, by the way, it's a black and white world, except for objects you can interact with, which are kind of this rainbowy color. So like when you see a crate or something, you can reach out, you grab it from a distance, and now you're moving it in space. And like it translates, like say you move your hand like X distance, the object in the world moves about like 4 times that distance, right? And so you end up being able to pick up boxes, you're flinging them around, you're slamming enemies with this stuff, with these crates, basically interacting with the world. You can use it as like mobile cover. So you're mixing up this stuff with guns. And they even do things where like if you pick up a barrel, it uses the I guess the triggers have like a partial pull and then you pull it all the way, kind of like a GameCube trigger, right? But that's using the what are the triggers, the DualSense trigger type, where so you just pull it a little bit and it kind of stops and you pick up a barrel. But if you squeeze it all the way in with that extra pull, you smash the barrel and it explodes, right? So you're actually picking up barrels, moving it around towards an enemy, and you pull it to like smash it on them and it explodes. That feels awesome. And you're powering up, you're getting new guns, you're running through, and it's almost like Doom Eternal style arena battles, but with all this like creative physics stuff going on and like a very stylish presentation. It feels great. It's just awesome. It's really fun to play. The mechanics are solid. The presentation is excellent. And it just gets right to the business and you're just playing, which is great. So that's definitely
got a comment here from Simplex supporter saying it also features the voice talents of Cortana and Solid Snake.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yes. I didn't think about that, but yes, you're right. That's in there. So this is a good game that I think is worth checking out. But if you want something a little more cerebral, you got Red Matter 2. And this is kind of a follow-up to a game that was also on PSVR 1, Red Matter. And it's sort of this like weird sci-fi Soviet era, sort of puzzly, shootery game where you're dropped into this weird world on a space station. They kind of replicate the PSVR 2 controllers in the game world, but they're actually like contraptions. So they have these like grabbers on them that are even analog, depending on how hard you pull the trigger. So you use it to manipulate things in the world. So it really translates your hand movement directly into actions in the game world in a way that feels insanely satisfying. It's very, very nice to use. And this is sort of this mysterious puzzle-driven game where you're kind of exploring, uncovering what happened. You're talking with people over the radio. You know, at first you wake up, you have to get this like little ship started, and it lands you on this space station that you start exploring. And you know, one of the first puzzles you encounter is like a terminal that's been smashed on the ground. You need to fix it, so you start scrounging around through things. You find replacement parts. You find new parts scattered around. You find like a schematic and you're trying to figure out how to reconstruct this thing. And then you find a key card in a locker and you kind of scan that in with your hand. And now you have access to that once you rebuilt the panel. Then you continue from there. And it's a lot of puzzles like that, but it's very tangible using these devices you hold. But then combat can happen. And there's like this rogue AI on the station. And it's just, it's compelling stuff. And it's definitely kind of a cool experience that I think is worth checking out. So there's that. I think, again, it's not something that would necessarily stick out as like a recognizable property, but it's good. It's like a really high quality game. And both of these, by the way, look really, really nice. Great image quality, super sharp visuals, smooth frame rates. You know, it takes good advantage of HDR, especially Red Matter 2, which just has a very vibrant, nice look to it. That I like. Then there's C-Smash VRS, which is sort of the sequel to the Dreamcast and arcade game, Cosmic Smash. It is so true to that atmosphere and vibe, and it plays so darn well. I talked about the demo before, but the final game here, and I think they updated the demo, the resolution is higher. It now runs at full frame rate, so there's no like asynchronous time warp happening here. You actually get the full fat experience. So it feels super fluid to play. There's a nice single player mode that I'm really enjoying. It's fun playing with friends. The only problem right now with it is that if you want to play multiplayer, there's not that many people on there because it's PSVR 2, which kind of sucks. So you kind of got to arrange games with friends if you want to play it, assuming your friends have a PSVR 2. So that's really good. I've also been playing some off and on Pavlova VR, which has been around for a while, and that's nothing new, but It's sort of a Counter-Strike-y Call of Duty-ish shooter, but in VR. But the focus here is on the tension and the weapon manipulation. Like the weapons you pick up and use, you really need to like work with the intricacies of them with like reloading, aiming, using them. It's all very tangible, realistic, and like sneaking around the maps and like listening using the 3D audio to your space. It's extremely tense. Like you'll hear somebody behind you coming around the corner. You like hide in a doorway and you're like kind of like leaning around. You got your weapon because you go down fast, and just trying to get those shots off while manipulating your weapon. It's really, really tense, and it looks awesome on PSVR. And then stuff like Humanity as well. Humanity's been out for a bit, but I still been playing that awesome puzzle game from the creators of Tetris Effect. And it feels amazing in VR. You're like towering over the arena, kind of moving around in 3D. It's basically Lemmings, but like way more stylish. That's worth checking out. And there's also some other games that I still want to try, but you know, I don't want to spend too much on this stuff, but I guess.
Well, I think ultimately the takeaway here is that there's a lot of stuff that isn't really being talked about or championed or getting the same kind of marketing as a typical major game release, right? But they are major games in their own right in terms of the experience, right? And I guess it's the amplification factor of VR that's really coming into its own here, plus the quality of the hardware, which was never really in doubt.
Exactly. So if you are a PSVR2 owner and you're like, man, there's nothing to play, there is stuff to play. You just got to seek it out a little bit more because it's not obvious. And frankly, they're not doing a great job at showcasing this to players, which, it makes it seem like there's nothing happening. But I assure you, there is good stuff here.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a bit strange that Sony itself isn't doing much to actually market these games.
I know. I don't get it. This is good stuff.
Well, the whole marketing for PSVR, even pre-launch, has been, shall we say, baffling. So yeah, it's kind of continuation of the same theme, really. A bit disappointing, but there we are. There is good stuff.
Also,
out there,
I haven't tried it myself, but I've heard that the Dark Pictures Switchback VR, which got kind of panned at launch because it had a lot of tech issues and some other various limitations. I've heard or read in several places that apparently it's being updated with like major changes to drastically improve the game. So I actually want to take a look at that to see, because wait, what is it? Yeah, so they say fixes for blurred, low-resolution visuals, fixes for textures and assets popping, massively reduced loading times, new visuals and enhancements, VFX and lighting, improvements to textures and environment assets, introduction of foveated rendering and FSR, hopefully not FSR1, Jesus. But it does seem like they've
FSR1 would be so bad in VR. I don't know what the heck.
But either way, it sounds like they've basically almost relaunched the game in terms of its technical presentation. So I kind of want to give it a look now.
Okay. Yeah. Good stuff. Well, there's still sort of a lot going on in PlayStation VR 2. We just need to sort of draw a bit more attention to it seems.